The sun was just rising over the African savannah, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Ranger Raymond adjusted his old hat and stepped out of his wooden house, listening to the distant calls of birds. For 30 years this land had been his home, every sound and shadow as familiar as his own breath. But that morning, the silence seemed different, carrying something hidden within. He walked his usual path toward the stream, notebook in hand, ready to jot down tracks of animals. The ground was still wet from the night rain, and the grass shone with dew. Suddenly, a strange cry cut through the calm air, sharp, broken, unlike anything he had heard before. It wasn't a roar of power, but a cry of pain. Raymond's heart quickened as he followed the sound. Through thick bushes, he found a young lion, barely past his cub years, lying helplessly on the muddy ground. One paw was swollen, punctured by deep wounds, and buzzing flies circled it mercilessly. The animal's eyes, once meant to blaze with pride, now held only fear and exhaustion. Raymond froze for a moment, then slowly approached, whispering softly as if to calm the beast. The lion tensed, baring his teeth weakly, but he didn't have the strength to rise. Raymond knelt, pulling out his small first aid kit, and carefully cleaned the wound. His hands trembled as he realized what caused it, the unmistakable twin marks of a snake bite. The venom had nearly killed the young predator. Yet the lion, instead of striking back, allowed the man's hands to work. Hours later, with the help of other rangers, the lion was taken to the reserve's treatment center. They named him Barrow, meaning survivor. While veterinarians worked tirelessly, Raymond stayed nearby, watching every shallow breath. Days passed, and against all odds, the lion slowly began to recover. But the venom had left scars, and his strength would take months to rebuild. One evening, as Raymond returned from patrol, he saw Barrow pressed against the bars of his rehabilitation cage. The lion's golden eyes locked on him, and a low rumble echoed from his chest. It wasn't a threat, it was recognition. From that day on, a bond formed between man and beast, built not by force, but by trust. The rangers whispered that the lion had chosen his guardian. Months later, when Barrow had grown stronger, Raymond took him to a training enclosure near the river. There, under careful supervision, the lion learned to stalk, pounce, and move with the wild rhythm once more. But one morning, as Barrow crouched in the grass, a sudden splash broke the calm. A massive crocodile rose from the water, eyes glinting, jaws snapping as it lunged toward the lion. Raymond shouted, his voice cracking through the air, and Barrow leapt back just in time. The crocodile's jaws clamped on empty ground, splashing mud and water in every direction. The rangers rushed forward with loud noises and sticks, forcing the beast to retreat into the depths. Barrow growled, shaken but alive, his eyes darting back to Raymond, as if asking, why had the river betrayed him? That night, Raymond couldn't sleep. He sat by Barrow's cage, whispering stories of battles, storms, and survival. "The savannah is full of dangers," he murmured, "but you must learn to face them." The lion lay close to the bars, listening silently. Their shadows merged under the moonlight, man and beast bound by something deeper than instinct, by shared survival against death itself. Weeks passed, and Barrow's strength returned fully. His mane thickened, his muscles grew firm, and his roar began to shake the air like thunder. Yet danger was never far. On one of their patrols, Raymond spotted movement in the tall grass, a massive black mamba, its body coiled, head raised, eyes fixed on the lion. In that instant, the savannah once again demanded the price of survival. The black mamba slid silently through the grass, its tongue flicking as it tasted the air. Barrow froze, ears twitching, muscles coiled but uncertain. Raymond's heart pounded. One strike from that serpent could kill even the strongest predator. Slowly, he reached for a stick, moving with deliberate calm, his eyes never leaving the snake. The snake hissed, its body tensing to strike. Barrow snarled and stepped forward, but Raymond shouted sharply, halting him. With one swift motion, Raymond thrust the stick to distract the mamba, buying enough time for the other rangers to drive it back into the thickets. Barrow growled low, his golden eyes following the serpent until it vanished, his instincts burning with frustration. After that day, Raymond knew Barrow's path would never be easy. The savannah was not only a home, but also a battlefield where every shadow could hide death. Yet the lion was learning not just strength, but patience, trust, and restraint. The man often whispered to him, "Power is nothing without wisdom, my boy." Barrow listened, his ears twitching at every word. Months passed, and Barrow grew into a majestic lion, his mane flowing like fire in the wind. When the time came, Raymond knew he couldn't keep him behind fences any longer. At dawn, the gate of the enclosure was opened, and Barrow stepped into the tall grass. He turned his head once, locking eyes with Raymond, and then vanished into the wild where he belonged. Life returned to its quiet rhythm, though Raymond often caught himself staring at the horizon, listening for a roar that never came. Then, one evening by the river, he saw tracks in the mud, massive lion prints, fresh and deep. His heart leapt. The next morning, a roar thundered across the savannah, and Barrow appeared at the station gate, stronger, prouder, yet calm as ever. From then on, Barrow visited every few months. He never lingered too long, never crossed the gate, but always came close enough for Raymond to see his golden eyes. Sometimes he brought his pride, standing tall as their leader, yet always pausing to look back at the man who once saved him. Rangers whispered, "This lion doesn't just belong to the wild, he belongs to him." Years rolled by. Raymond's hair grew white, his steps slower, but Barrow never forgot. Their meetings became a legend told around fires, a tale of man and beast bound beyond words. Yet time is merciless. Raymond fell ill, his body frail, and doctors told him the truth. His days were numbered, but he refused to leave. "I will die here, where the earth still breathes," he said softly. One dry season morning, Barrow appeared again, but something was different. His roar was not calm, but desperate, circling the gate as if searching. Rangers hurried to the wooden house and found Raymond weak, barely breathing. They carried him to the gate, and when the lion saw him, he stopped, pressing his paws against the bars. Raymond's trembling hand reached out, touching them faintly. In that moment, the savannah fell silent. Raymond's voice was weak but filled with pride. "Barrow, you lived." The lion lowered his head, pressing his forehead against the bars, his golden mane brushing the iron. With a final breath, Raymond's hand fell still, resting on his friend's paw. A ranger whispered through tears. He left with the lion's soul beside him. Barrow returned many times after Raymond's death, each visit a silent vigil by the grave near the river. Once, when a crocodile tried to crawl from the waters too close, Barrow drove it back with a furious roar, guarding the place as if it were his own. And so the legend grew of a man, a lion, and the savannah itself, bound forever beyond life and death.